Ooh, welcome back to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for the Week 11 waiver wire video, and I will go over the bye weeks for this week, as well as coming up in Week 12. There are no bye weeks in Week 13. You can actually see up on the screen the Week 11 buys and the Week 13 buys. I will also be covering following up on injuries and guys that we are expecting to be able to come back, guys who might come back, etc., as well as the new injuries from Week 10, as recent of news on all of that as I can give you, as well as, of course, then the waiver wires and the DST streaming options that I think are quite possibly worth it if you are streaming DSTs this week. Let's get on to the show, because I don't think that there's, we can make this a quick episode, I think, but it is a decent waiver wire, so let's go ahead and get on to it. All right, so to start off, Darren Waller still a little ways off. Week 14 is the soonest that he will be able to come back. Josh Palmer, Week 13. And next week, Zach Ertz, Dawson Knox, Kyron Williams, all available to come back. So that's, probably not going to be great for some options that people have been relying on as of late, have been getting some good production as of late, which reminds me, as far as Dawson Knox goes, the Monday night game has not occurred yet. So if there is any big injury news from that, or if anything with the waiver wire would change due to that, I will update that in the comments pretty early on in the morning, as soon as I can, so that way you can check down there for any updates, basically. And we know Dallas Goedert still has 3 weeks left for his broken forearm before he should be able to come back. T. Higgins is not going to be expected to come back on the Thursday night this game, but he is week to week. Kendra Miller, Dameon Pierce could be coming back from their ankle injuries as possible. Zay Jones has been day-to-day for about 5 or 6 weeks at this point, so he is still day-to-day. And as far as Matthew Stafford goes, the team has expressed optimism that he could return this week. Then, of course, Justin Fields could return. Same with Justin Jefferson, Pat Freiermuth, KJ Osborne, Devontae Parker, Khalil Herbert, a little bit more optimistic than those other guys, and very optimistic about Devon Achane. He is likely to return. He is already practicing as of Monday, I believe, or he would have practiced on Monday if they had a Monday practice, something like that. Once again, you can see the Week 11 buys: Atlanta, Indianapolis, New England, New Orleans. Week 12, there are no buys, but then Week 13 and Week 14, there are some buys. And Week 13 is going to be another buy-pocalypse with Baltimore, Buffalo, Chicago, Minnesota, Giants, and Las Vegas all on buy. That's going to bring us to the new Week 10 injuries from Week 10. Taylor Heineke is week to week. They do have a bye week this week, Atlanta. So I don't think a hamstring affects the quarterback usually. Depends probably the quarterback too, quite as much as it does other positions. So they seem to be optimistic that he could come back, but they also seem to be determining over the break who their quarterback will be for the rest of the year. I'm going to look at things there. Derek Carr has re-injured that AC joint shoulder injury from earlier on in the season, and he had a concussion. Once again, gets another week to recover from that, and the team is optimistic that he will be available in 2 weeks' time when they go on the field again. Deshaun Watson was in a walking boot after the game. He said, "I'll be fine." I know that there was a news report earlier today that said that they would be looking at that, so I assume at some point on Tuesday, the day that this video comes up, there will be a report, especially if it's negative news in regards to Deshaun Watson and his leg. But as of now, unless there's damage that they weren't expecting, I would say it seems like he's likely to be playing this upcoming weekend. Alexander Mattison concussion, usually that's going to be a 1 week recovery time. Not always. Sometimes it is shorter, very rarely, and sometimes it is longer. Michael Thomas, knee injury. It is considered, the team fears that it's fairly significant but not season ending, so don't have anything else on that as of this point in time. Another thing that will probably come out at some point today, a little bit more information on that. Unless, of course, does New Orleans they do have a bye week. Sometimes news doesn't come out so much. They don't have to release injury reports or anything like that. So maybe we won't know more about that in the short term. We'll see. Jalen Hyatt had a concussion, so once again, the expectation would be that he'll be out a week. And Gerald Everett had a back injury in the game. I don't believe that he went back into the game, but I can't really find much information on that, so we will have to just wait and see if that is something. But I think if it was major, we would know it. So let's get on to the quarterbacks. And as you can see, it's a pretty low, short quarterback list. Joshua Dobbs has been absolutely killing it. He was already doing fine in Arizona, but in Minnesota, he's been murdering things. So you can see a good strength of schedule for him. Rest of season, there's a bye week coming up for him yet, but Denver, Chicago over the next couple of weeks. Denver, maybe not the greatest matchup. That's good of a one that we thought it was earlier in the season, but still, especially with the work that he does on the ground, it seems to be like he is a must roster. Definitely a good option to have. Jordan Love might be a good streaming option to have this week. I don't think that the quarterback streaming options are great overall this week, and so, it is a good matchup going up against the Chargers, so you like that. But when Jordan Love is the number one and only option on the streamers list, you know that it wasn't great. There were two other guys who almost barely just missed me suggesting, but it's not a good streaming week for quarterbacks. Let's move on to the running backs list. And there are a couple of options here. Ty Chandler, especially if you need a 1 week rental, should definitely be able to do it for you. Madison with that concussion should be out for 1 week at least. After that, if that happens to go longer, really good matchup against Chicago coming up. Strength of schedule for the rest of the season's good. And the reason that I do bring this up a little bit and have this little reminder here for myself for Ty Chandler is we did see him maybe kind of taking over, getting more work than than Madison in this game. So I think it would be a split. So I don't know how good or trustworthy he would be if he's in a split with Madison in that Vikings offense. But at the same time, that Vikings offense seems to be in pretty good hands going forward. So maybe it is going to be somewhat valuable. Don't break your bank, I don't think, on any of these guys. But also, you need a win, and or you're in dire straits. Don't be afraid to go out and be a little bit bold at this point of the year if you're still in it, and that's what it's going to take. Keaton Mitchell didn't get picked up enough last week, apparently, so he's still made the qualifications, which, by the way, are less than 50% owned. There sometimes are some very borderline guys who are right around 50% owned that I would love to put on the list, but they don't make the cut. So if a guy's not on here, you think that they probably should have been. Maybe they weren't less than 50% owned on ESPN specifically. And so, if you're still questioning it, feel free to drop a comment and ask me about it, and I'd be happy to get back to you and answer that. But yeah, Keaton Mitchell, a good option. There's a chance if he could be the starting option or even in a 60-40 split with like Gus Edwards or something, that Keaton Mitchell could be very valuable down the stretch. So he is worth that chance in a lot of cases. If you're already holding on to like Zach Charbonnet, Tyjae Spears, two guys that I have on my squad, I understand not dropping them for Keaton Mitchell because I don't know that I would quite drop them for Keaton Mitchell, but it's definitely very close. Then Devin Singletary, another guy who just had a huge week, and he might get another opportunity, he might not. So it's a bit of a gamble with him. But before the injury to Dameon Pierce, Devin Singletary was starting to take up some of that work, etc. So a couple of decent matchups coming up as well for him. Definitely worth having on a roster. Either way, really, but usefulness we'll see depending on the health of Dameon Pierce. Then here are my top stash options in the bold, are guys who I think should be stashed on somebody's roster in every league. If the leader goes down in those situations, then I think you're going to get a pretty good situation yourself if you're holding on to that running back already and not have to spend anything on the waiver wire to get them. Then free agent Antonio Gibson's a top end free agent. I don't think you should have to really spend anything on the waiver wire to get him. He's been sitting out there in your league. Then I don't think there's anything that's going to make somebody go out and get him this week necessarily. And Tyler Algier, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Justice Hill. Leonard Fournette's a stash. Justice Hill is almost off of this list, but those top three are definitely options that if you need somebody to play, there might be available and you could use them. Moving on to the wide receivers, a few good options here as well. Brandon Cooks, just as I finally gave up on him, thought the team was just looking for other options after last week, who I made him a love him last week, and it just didn't go well. I was devastated, but he had a really, really big week. Maybe they are figuring that out, and last week was just a down week, because prior to that, I thought they were starting to figure it out with Brandon Cooks. So good schedule, rest of season, good schedule coming up for him. Same with DeMar Douglas, rest of season. Josh Downs, another guy who has a similar situation bye week. I think he's actually the one I was thinking of with the injury, not DeMar Douglas, though he was injured last week. Josh Downs had the injury, and then he has the bye week coming up, so I think a lot of people just dropped him. But a lot of people probably want to get him back on their squad. So you can get sneaky with Josh Downs. He's not as high up as DeMar Douglas on a lot of waiver wire lists. And Noah Brown, you might need to spend a little bit of fab on to get onto your roster. I don't necessarily think that he is worth it, especially once Nico Collins returns. But if Nico Collins doesn't return this week, there's no reason to think that he is not a good option. Trenton Irwin also could be a good option. We do already know that T. Higgins is probably not going to be playing, so you like that. Added A.T. Perry onto this list, Jalen Guyton onto this list. Yeah, so this is just my list of guys who are not bad options that may be available to hold on to the back end of your roster, or in several of the instances more towards the top, you are even very usable. Then Pat Freiermuth, as we saw, could be coming back as early as this week, right? I believe I have that right. So it would be a bad stash option to grab at tight end. I mean, I think Pat's great. He has been good in his first couple of years in the league. We haven't really seen a whole lot of him this season, and that offense should be fully healthy, which with him back, which should help that offense in general. Things are just looking a little bit better for that offense going forward, which should help Pat Freiermuth. Then for some streamers this week, Luke Musgrave going against the Chargers, very good. Tyler Higbee going up against Seattle. Trust that just a little bit more than Michael Mayer going against Miami, but pretty much head-to-head there. I think Luke Musgrave stands heads and heels above this as the option if you are streaming to go after and take a shot on. It's really what it is. Not a great streaming situation for tight ends. A lot of the good tight ends have been picked up, and there are quite a few good ones. So hopefully you're not in a streaming situation anyways. DST streamers of the week, I got you. I don't have a top dog here. Miami Dolphins versus Las Vegas. I tend to like the numbers. May not quite back that up, but Miami's defense did get a few pieces back, so I think that they're better than they have been all season long. And Aiden O'Connell, of course, is now playing for Las Vegas, and I do think that probably makes them a little bit better for defenses going against them as far as points that they could get against them. So I like this situation the most, but the numbers, I believe, would say Minnesota Vikings versus Denver would be the best option there. Minnesota Vikings defense really been coming on. Surprisingly, a good defense so far on the season. And Denver has been okay. They're not like a great offense, I don't think, to go up against. But, the numbers say they're not terrible to go up against either. Then Detroit Lions versus Chicago. Detroit Lions defense hasn't been great. Chicago's a really good matchup, but I do like Detroit Lions defense a fair bit, and I think in this kind of situation, they could probably take advantage of that. Of course, Justin Fields coming back might not help things for Detroit Lions, and Jacksonville versus Tennessee. Really nothing to add there. It's that might be your safest bet if you just want to take a safe bet there, with especially if Will Levis is going again. That could increase the chances of it being a big week for Jacksonville's DST. And that is all that I have, so thank you very, very much for stopping on through. Appreciate you. Had a big spike in subscribers, so that is awesome. We keep on growing here, and I appreciate it. Appreciate all you new people, and let's go out and win you the week. Peace out.